Hi, and welcome back to another series of ours. We've been talking on mental health this whole month, trying to educate people and promote it a bit more, and taking advantage of the fact that it is mental health awareness month. Sorry for that. And so tonight we have interesting guests who are coming and joining us on to talk a bit more on mental health and the youth and children. And so I'll let them introduce themselves. I think we're going to start with the only gentleman we have on our panel tonight. Mr. Lorenzo, do you mind introducing yourself and your professional background to the viewers?
Of course, sure. I'm humbled to go first, being the male of the call. So thank you. I would usually yield to our ladies. But my name is Lorenzo Webber. I serve as the Director of Youth Services for the Township of Proviso. And I'm also the Program Director for the non-for-profit known as Strengthening Proviso Youth. So those are my connections there.
Thank you so much. We're so excited to have you on. Cynthia, would you mind presenting yourself to the viewers and your professional background as well, please?
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Ogechi Onyeka, but I go by Cynthia, and I'm a Ph.D. candidate in clinical psychology at Loyola University Chicago. And I work primarily with children. So I'm focusing on clinical child and adolescent psychology.
Okay, so thank you so much for that. Tonight we actually have a very interesting, if I should say, topic. Just because in my cultural background, there's that thing that comes and says, hey, children can't be stressed, or children can't have mental illnesses, or you can't be depressed as a child, or all these illnesses that are related to children that children can have. And so I really wanted us to kind of have this conversation because I think it looks different with a child who has a mental illness or mental disorder. And so the first thing I wanted us to kind of dive into is to talk about the kind of illnesses we might typically find in children. So I don't know if Cynthia, if you would be willing to kind of touch a bit on that for us. What kind of illnesses or disorders would we usually find in children?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think it depends on a number of things, especially with kids. A lot of it has to do with developmental status, particularly with age. So with younger kids, like preschool age kids, neurodevelopmentally, a lot of the things we see have to do with ADHD or autism spectrum disorders, if it's along those lines. And then also, as with preschool age kids, a lot of disruptive behavior disorders. So those are disorders related to what's a good example? Aggression, non-compliance, basically just like irritability, just not, following directions. We see that with a lot of preschool populations. And as kids get older, then we see more of the internalizing anxiety, depressive disorders, and then also adjustment disorders, especially in adolescence and towards early or young adult, with all the different changes that go across that developmental period. Those are presentations too. We don't really see personality disorders at this age, nor do we see pretty severe psychopathy related to psychosis or severe mood disorders like bipolar. We don't really see that in kids, but the others tend to kind of become prevalent around those early ages.
Yeah, I'm really happy that you kind of touched on the personality disorder part because I feel like at these ages, they're kind of discovering themselves. So their personalities are still being shaped and formed and they're trying to figure out who they are in society. And so I think the other question I had that is kind of linked to that is how do we kind of know the difference between maybe saying that's just typical teenage behavior or typical growth in a child and kind of saying, hey, that might be a concern. This is no more just typical. What ways can parents or family members or even teachers or loved ones be able to notice that difference and that switch between just a normal child and one who is going through a mental illness or disorder?
I think there are a number of ways that families, caregivers, and other adults in the child's life can tell. I think, and this is something that we had touched on before in our other conversations, but just noticing a change in behavior, especially if it's consistent across environments. If you notice it at home, and then you're also noticing it at school, if you're noticing it in their areas where they have other social supports like extracurricular activities with coaches or, churches or other religious organizations, any type of community. If you're noticing these changes and they're marked difference and or they're impacting the child's functioning, that's one of the red flags for sure.
Thank you so much for that. And I think you're kind of leading us into our next question. And I wanted to ask actually Mr. Lorenzo about this. I know you work with youth. And so let's say maybe somebody, a young person is going through something. What ways does a young person reach out? Just because doing some research on my side, I've seen that it's easy for adults to kind of access assistance than it is for young people, because maybe young people have to go through parents and maybe an adult and all of that. So if a young person is listening to us right now, or maybe a parent is listening to us, what resources are available there for children and their families who might be experiencing mental illnesses?
So there are a number of community resources available that's offered through organizations such as the Proviso Public Partnership that provides, and those who may need references to websites, it's pppnfp.org, where there's service navigation. And so you can speak with a service navigator that can connect you to a number of local services that are centered around whether it's mental health support or other preventative sorts of support services available in the community. And then also our youth services office here also provides a number of supports that'll connect you to preventative services as well, just to start a conversation around conversations similar to this. So those are just a few of the things that are available. I could start talking about a number of local organizations, including the Answer Incorporated, that provides autism awareness and other support services in connections to treatment services in the local community.
Yeah, and while you were just talking in my head, I was just thinking, what if maybe the person who has the illness does not know it's a young person? They just feel some kind of change. Speaking to some few young people and hearing their stories, you realize that they go through this and they don't even know probably that, something's wrong with me. They don't know the name to what is wrong with them, but they know something is wrong with them. So how would you maybe kind of give an advice to a young person who's seeing a friend who is suffering? What steps can they take to kind of helping their friend out? Because I'm using this in reference to an experience, a personal experience I also had, where I was suicidal at that time and tell my friends all the time I want to take my life. But when you tell your friends that at a young age, they kind of don't know what to do. It's like, okay, is she being serious? Maybe we say everything will be okay, then things will go away. So how can young people as well be a bit responsible when a friend opens up to them with such a heavy thing? What other steps do you think they can be able to take to help their friends out?
Well, thank you so much for asking that question. The first thing, of course, with something like that taking place is you want to connect them, of course, with professional assistance. And so I think before the end of the call, we'll probably drop some like support services there. But if you all are in a school setting, you definitely will want to talk to connect to the social worker. There's also phone numbers and things that are also will be provided as well. But the main idea is to get them connected to a responsible adult. You want to get them in contact with them so that they can carry on the next process of getting help. Understanding that sometimes these situations are what I would describe as a very touchy situation in which someone's confided in you and told you something. And while they were telling you something, they mentioned something that they were thinking about harming themselves, or there are instances where they are thinking about harming someone else. The first priority at that point, if you really want to help your friend, is to get them in contact with someone that can help. And that's usually one of your social workers or one of those individuals that have the responsibility of getting them to the next step of getting the help that they really need. This is sometimes a very scary time. And very uncomfortable. But what you're doing for your friend at that moment is the thing that they really need the most, which is to be connected to someone that can really help them. Sometimes we would try to talk our friends through it, and conversations are helpful. However, you want to make part of that conversation that you're having with them is you want to say, what we want to do is we want to focus on getting some help. And so that's when we refer. to those helpful resources. And so we'll be sure, I'm sure, with both of us on the line today, I'm sure there'll be some attention on providing those resources.
Yes, definitely. And I love the fact that you kind of say that your friend needs it. You're not a snitch. If so to say, sometimes people get afraid that I might be called a snitch. He or she confided in me, and here I am going to look for help elsewhere. So I wanted to see if Cynthia has anything for us for families. Maybe I know that some families in certain cultures feel embarrassed of children who have mental illnesses or who might be suffering in some way. What ways can families be able to help children not feel like they're a burden or that they're probably weak for having such mental illnesses? And maybe if there is a family probably that is not open to treatment, in what other ways can maybe teachers or third parties still be able to help children get the treatment that they need?
Yeah, that is a very good question, a very important question, especially now with a lot of families going through a really hard time with COVID and all the transitions that have been related to that. That's something that I've seen. I think within the family, and if the family is noticing these changes in their child or in their children, and they are, recognizing them, and they want to be able to support, I think first just having a conversation with the child and trying to understand what's going on. I think, a child can see a therapist 1 hour a day, but they're with their family for the remainder of that time, So those are the people, those are the natural supports that once therapy is over or once the session's done, they're going to go back to their family. So if they feel comfortable, having open conversations with their family or caregivers, that can be a whole host of support that may not be able to get done in a therapy space. So having the parent, asking the child questions, or even just setting aside time, one-on-one time where they're just doing an activity. They may not even need to be talking if they're just cooking together or playing a game, just so the child can know that there's going to be a time where I'm going to spend time with my parent or my caregiver. No one's going to come in and take, time away. My parents not going to ask me all these questions about school or why my grades are bad or anything like that. Like their sole attention is on me. Over time, just building that attachment can be really helpful for the child to open up about how they're feeling. And so that's a good first step. After that, just seeking out sources of support with respect to getting professional help. And those two can be done at the same time in tandem. Like it doesn't have to be one and then the other. Seeking out professional help definitely would be the next step. And for kids who aren't able to get that support within their family, because that's a reality as well. Teachers or caregivers, are they're also able to recognize these changes, just always checking in on that child in the space that you see them, and just checking in how things are going. If you see them in the hall, just trying to just ask them questions or try to spend time with them, kind of similar, just knowing that, just so the child knows like you are a person that they can come to if they have any concerns. And if they continue to show up with these red flags that you feel like, okay, this is something that needs professional help, seek professional assistance, and then also check in with their parents for sure.
Yeah, and I feel like you're kind of dropping gems and you're helping us navigate this, because the other question I also wanted to ask was, what if maybe we can be able to try and prevent this? Because I'm a mental health first aid instructor, and while going through the course, you see that there are certain protective factors that can actually help the child not experience mental illnesses or reduce the impact of that. So what practical tips can you guys actually provide our viewers and our listeners that any person, any parent, any teacher can put in place in their household or in their schools or their church, maybe at that camp session, that can help us prevent a child from experiencing mental illness or disorders, or probably even if they experience it, be able to cope with such an illness or disorder. So I think we'll start with Mr. Lorenzo and then we'll go to Cynthia.
Yeah, and I will definitely say one of the ways that we do that, we all have a role to play, which is to be a haven of support. When we're a haven of support, being supportive family members or supportive friends around individuals, it's opportunities that we have to create things, or opportunities for positive communication is one of those great things. It's like how we speak to one another, I'm always a big proponent of genuine connection. And when we get connection, when we take time to really engage in meaningful conversations, not just, how's your day, but quality time. And similar to the point that was made earlier, it doesn't always have to fill the space with talking. Spending quality time could be in the same space, sharing a meal together, doing activities together, watching a movie together. Those sorts of things are opportunities where a genuine connection is fostered. And these make up this thing known as a haven of support that we provide with one another. Listening to one another when we're in those spaces. So if you are working or in a space with a young person, it's acknowledging their presence. And that's acknowledging them and seeing them, smiling at them, waving at them. Those sorts of things create environments where support and connection can be found. And it's not just in the home, it's when we're out and about, when we're in our places of employment or in our schools and places like that, we have the opportunity to create these havens of support.
Thank you so much for that. Cynthia, did you have anything else to add on to that?
Yeah, I think honestly, very similarly, those areas of support, social support, are like major protective factors for kids. And kind of going along those lines too, when we think about what is helpful in reducing the impact of some of the burdens that can be caused by mental health outcomes. I'm coming from a biopsychosocial perspective, and like based on a theory of how the environment can impact children. There's some things that are just uncontrollable, right? Systemic racism, institutionalized oppression, community violence, like these are experiences, environmental factors that can impact mental health, that, it's no one's fault, it's just by way of how society is set up. And especially for those who've been historically excluded. So helping kids being able to cope with that by way of programming that's grounded in like positive youth development, opportunities to create spaces where youth can feel safe and can feel like they can be able to connect with one another, because connection is so important. And then also opportunities to empower youth and amplify their strengths. I know organizations that promote like leadership skills or contributing to the community and things like that, giving kids the opportunity to feel like they're agents of change, can be helpful and serve as a protective factor for some of these outcomes due to the environmental exposures that they can't really deal with because it's been pressed upon them.
Great.
Yeah.
Well,
thank you so much for that. Oh, you wanted to add something, Mr. Lorenzo? Sorry to cut you out.
Yeah, no, I'm such a fan of what was just said. I just wanted to just tag even more so, say that those sorts of empowering our kids is one of those things that really, it warms my heart whenever I hear it, because they have an identity, they have something to say and show, and when we find out things similar to having whether it's a special needs of sorts or things like that, education becomes key. When individuals are informed about what those things are and the various ways that to the point that was made earlier, cope or navigate that, it leaves a sense of empowerment to be able to understand that there may be a difference, but that difference is surrounded by support, and we all play a real critical role in celebrating the uniqueness of so many different people. So if whether you're listening to this and you've been diagnosed with something or you have curiosity, we all have the opportunity to support an individual's learning about their truths, and those things associated with that, and the possibilities that still exist even in light of those realities. There are incredible responsibilities, and so each of us as adults and caring members of a community have that opportunity to pour into our young people and those we come in contact with to say, hey, the possibilities are still endless, and to keep that thought of hope and pushing those messages as we put supportive services in place and those sorts of things, and caring communities and families, those create that haven. So I really appreciated how that was shared just a moment ago, and so I'm grateful and value has been added to me as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Yes. And I think what I'm getting from both of you just when you're talking is you're talking about the respecting a child. I think so many times we forget that even children want to feel a bit respected, a bit considered. When Cynthia talks about involve the child with cooking, you could spend time with them just by being in the kitchen. You don't have to talk a lot. As long as they feel like, oh, they trusted me today, maybe to cook rice, or I assisted maybe to cut the onions today, and they feel a bit proud. They could even brag about it over dinner and say, hey, you're eating something I cooked, and it makes them feel proud. And so I love that. I love just getting them involved and looking for different ways in which you can also keep them active in the household. So as we come to the end, actually, I also wanted to ask, what ways can we keep this conversation going? How can we make sure that we are effective in addressing mental health issues within our youth and our children? I wanted to start with Cynthia, and then we'll go to Mr. Lorenzo and kind of switch it up.
Yeah, definitely. I think kind of continuing on that train of empowerment and just like listening to children and understanding that they are the experts in their own lived experiences is just allowing kids the space to feel comfortable to share how they feel. Because I think a lot of times, like you were saying, Rosette, like kids are treated not like little humans, but like oh, this is a kid. They don't know anything. They're not. They don't know what they're doing. Like, this is grown folks' business. Like, you don't know what's going on, and just very easily invalidated with their feelings. And I think that is not necessarily the source of a mental health concern or mental health disorder, but it can definitely exacerbate anything that might be dormant at that time, or anything that could be kind of like amplified given the environment, the stressors in the family, the stressors in the world and society and things like that. And youth are more readily able to cope with some of those challenges when they feel like they're in an environment that can support them. So just providing that space for kids is very, very important to help promote mental health, just in general.
Yeah, thank you so much. And we're kind of encouraging as well families to be a bit more open to this. So, Mr. Lorenzo, did you have anything to add on to what Cynthia just said to us right now?
Yeah, some people may be listening and they say, well, light of the information that I have, what can I do? Well, I would encourage you to become an advocate for, just the mental illness or just learning about things around the very things that people experience. And in understanding that, committing yourself to become educated about these things, and in being an advocate for mental wellness is an incredible it's an incredible vocation that adds to an individual's life experience. I consider myself an advocate for a youth, but youth of all different backgrounds, and the way that they lead life and celebrating them. So if you think about empowering individuals with information and being empowered with information yourself on how you can advocate and aid and support and be part of that, there's opportunities to work with local organizations to volunteer and just support. And so those things are, I couldn't really add too much to what was said other than just join in the incredible work of just being aware the various needs of our kids, and then find ways to support it. Many individuals may work with kids, but may not consider themselves advocates. They may not be aware and may not commit to educating themselves on those various needs. But what you find is it's a whole world of incredible stories that's waiting to be experienced and told. So those are the only things that I would add.
All right. I feel like we kind of heard amazing things today, and I really love that we got to talk about this, because so many times when we talk about big issues, we usually leave children and the youth behind, like, they're not as important. So I really hope that a family probably that is going through this challenge feels a bit important, and like we see them and we know that you guys are going through this, and hopefully this as well educates certain people about other people's sufferings and challenges that they have to go through. So I wanted us to leave our viewers on a positive and hopeful note. So I would like to ask Cynthia, if you would leave maybe a family that feels a bit drained, that feels a bit overwhelmed. Right now, maybe they have a loved one or a family member that has a mental illness. What would you give? What word of advice or encouragement would you leave with them today?
Yeah, definitely to listen to one another, especially in these times when we're all pretty much inside the house together at all hours of the day anyway. Just spend the time to listen to one another because you never know what information you'll gather if you just sit and listen. I think a lot of times with kids, they do sometimes it seems like they're doing a good job hiding how they feel, but they really don't. I think a lot of kids will share how they feel. It may not be like, I feel like this, but you'll see it in their mannerisms. You'll see it in how they talk about their friends or how they talk about things that they like. And you'll listen and you'll be able to see any differences, especially if you've been around a child for more than like a day. Like you'll notice a difference in how they behaved before. So just listen and just, listen for the sake of understanding and not listening for the sake of responding. Because I think a lot of parents will listen to respond with a way to fix things or how they should have done it or anything like that. But listen to understand how they interpreted that situation and see where that gets. And hopefully that can be helpful.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you. Yeah, I love that. I love that. Mr. Lorenzo, I wanted you to kind of address our youth. If a young person is listening to us right now, what word of encouragement or advice would you give them if probably they feel a bit down, they feel a bit overwhelmed, they feel like maybe they might be going through maybe something that they feel like other people don't understand, that only them was going through that. What would you share with them and what word of hope or advice would you leave for them?
I would definitely take time to say that not only are you working to become someone in the future, you are someone today. I want you to take a moment and just acknowledge just how amazing you are, unique with your experiences, but a world that you will leave an unforgettable impact on. Help and support is available, and at times it is difficult to find. However, the things that are inside of you, these things are unique to you, and understanding the fact that the stories that you will tell about your journey and your experience will benefit someone else. And so sometimes we take adversity or issues or difficulties as a reason to quit. But I want to encourage you not to quit. I want you to understand that many of us adults in the community are rooting for you, and we're here for you at your service, not to judge you, not to fix you, but to care, to listen, like was said earlier. And so your future is bright. Your future is bright, and nothing can hold you back. But you. And we're here to support by removing those obstacles that would even try to prevent you from living out your full potential. Last thing is, the thing about potential is it's something that's inside you that is just waiting to burst out. Potential is there to be expressed through your creativity, through all of the things that you desire to do in this life. And so we have the responsibility to support you as you pursue your potential. So that's what I will say to those things.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much to everybody who tuned in tonight or in the day, if you're watching us during the day. I don't have anything else to add. I think you guys did us justice by ending it on a good note. So I would like just to remind everybody that we will have resources linked on our videos. If you are going through something, or if you know somebody who's going through any challenges, do not be afraid to reach out for help. There is a road to recovery. There is a hope. This is not the end of your life. Whatever it is that you're going through, there are people out there who love you, who are willing to help you. We love you and we are willing to help you. You can always reach out to us. So thank you so much to our lovely panelists, and have a good night to everybody.